How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to Project Time Tech. Remember when Symantec made firewall appliances? This is a Symantec SGS360R, and it's part of the 300 series of appliances that were aimed mainly at small businesses and branch offices. Now, there were a couple of versions available. The smaller 320, which offered 4 LAN ports and a single WAN port, and the 360 model, which offered 8 LAN ports, 2 WAN ports, and was capable of WAN aggregation and WAN failover. Now, Symantec also had a larger line of appliances, the 5400 series, and these were geared mainly toward the enterprise space. The evolution of these larger devices was a result of a few company acquisitions. They were originally developed by Raptor Systems, who was then sold to Accent Technologies in 1997, and later acquired by Symantec in 2000 for a staggering $975 million. The company I work for sold and serviced both the 300 and 5400 series of appliances, and this one in particular was in production at a client's branch site from around 2004 to around 2007. The primary role of this guy, aside from being a firewall, was to provide site-to-site VPN connectivity back to the main office. This one was decommissioned and somehow found its way back into its original box and into our storage room, where it's been for a long, long time. I thought it might be fun to have a closer look at it and, if it still works, configure it and give it some internet access. Just a quick overview of the features of this device. Obviously, we have a stateful inspection firewall, which is its primary goal. We have gateway-to-gateway VPN, and we also have support for client VPN. There are 10 licenses built into the box using the Symantec VPN client. And if you have a Symantec Enterprise antivirus server, this can do policy enforcement. So if a workstation either doesn't have antivirus at all or doesn't have the latest definitions, then this thing can either block the traffic or give a warning based on the policy you set in the box. It offers intrusion detection and intrusion prevention and some pretty remedial content filtering in the form of block and allow lists. The only downside with this is there's no intelligence built in. You have to specifically block or specifically allow, so it gets kind of cumbersome from a administrative standpoint. We have 2 WAN ports capable of aggregation and load balancing, which is really, really cool for an appliance this size, and an 8-port 10100 switch. So basically, most of these features here are perfect for the small business environment. If you have 3 or 4 users in a small office and you need a firewall and maybe a way to VPN in and RDP to your workstation, this is the device for you. There was also a wireless option on these, which is secure wireless LAN option. And if I remember correctly, there is a PC card slot on the side that would accept the wireless card. I don't remember if that was a Symantec wireless card or if it was something that maybe you had to have a standard like an AeroNet or something, but I do recall that. I don't think we ever had any in production, but I do recall that. Well, let's unbox this and have a look at it. We have 2 CDs right off. This one is the Symantec Client VPN software. We'll install this later on an XP station and just see what it looks like. And we have the tools and documentation. Documentation is self-explanatory, and if I remember correctly, the tools part is basically a small TFTP server to copy firmware images up to the device. I believe also there's the factory firmware images here on this disk as well. There's a power brick. 12-volt DC output. That's actually kind of nice. That's a fairly common voltage. We have a 9-pin serial cable here. This was used, I believe, for accessing the command line. If I recall this correctly, you have to get into the command line in order to initiate a firmware update. Also, this would be used to connect a serial modem. So, if you wanted some backup internet access, you could have a dial-up modem attached here, and if the primary internet went down, it could actually fail over to dial-up. It'd be slow, but you'd have internet. Oh look, there's also the original Ethernet cable still in its packaging. That's never been opened. Finally, we have the device. Now I had to put tape over the top of it because it has the original company name in the most permanent marker I've ever found, so I had to be careful about that. On the front, we have some lights. Don't recall what most of these do, but we have some lights. I'm sure the manual would tell us. Nothing on that side. On this side, we have our 8-port switch, our 2 WAN ports, some dip switches, and I think these had to do with the firmware updates. I believe you had to flip them in a certain way to initiate firmware, or maybe to get a console, something like that. Our power import jack and our power switch. Also, that's a reset button. Over on this side is the card slot, and I believe this is where the wireless LAN card would live, if I remember correctly. And on the bottom is our Symantec sticker. This is a pretty interesting thing. I wish more devices had these. A lot of small businesses don't have racks and things like that, so a lot of things are just mounted to the wall. This is handy to be able to just stick the thing up on the wall and hang it up. Well, all right, let's power this thing up and go through some configuration on it. I've got the awesome old Windows XP laptop. This is a Panasonic Toughbook. I think it's a CF19. Let's get some power going. Well, we appear to be powered up. I have a couple of lights going on there. We'll just plug our LAN port 1 in here. Pop that into the laptop. All right, over to the laptop screen now. Well, it looks like I have a connection. Let's see what we've got here. So 0.2 is what I received, and 0.1 is the gateway, so that should be the firewall. Oh, this thing's lagging. Trying to translate Google. There we go, we're in. So our WAN 1 is disconnected, which that stands to reason I have nothing plugged in to the WAN ports on it yet. So let's have a look at our WAN setup. DHCP is what we're set to, so that's going to work good. Over here I have a small switch, and that small switch is going straight out to a Starlink connection that's on this building, and there's nothing else plugged onto it. It's just dead right there. So let's give this thing some WAN connectivity. We'll go in there. Actually, let's undo all this because that's kind of a mess. And we will go into WAN 1. Plenty of wires there. And let's just go back to logging and monitoring. And it should grab an address. Actually, it already has grabbed an address, 1.217. So this thing really should just browse the internet at this point. There's not a whole lot. Yeah, there we go. So I wonder if there's any speed tests that will still work on Internet Explorer version 6. Probably not. Guarantee you that's not going to happen. Yeah, all this is going to be SSL issues. I'm almost positive. What about OldNet? There, the OldNet. That actually works. So obviously the thing still works. Let's get into some of the configuration on it and just walk through it. So with the very first menu item here, we have the status. So we're connected. We have 1.217 from the Starlink. Default gateway is .1. That makes sense. 0.1 is our LAN. There's our firmware. 210 build 622. Let's look at our log. Well, not a lot's happened. System started, WAN port is normal. Yay. In log settings, I can forward that to an SMTP server. That's pretty interesting. Send stuff to syslog and change my logging types. Time server. Troubleshooting. Forward WAN to LAN. Full on bridge. Oh, and there's some ping. There's tools. Ping and DNS lookup. So what about our target host? What if we check www.google.com through WAN 1, which is where we're plugged up? It gets it. What if we try a ping test? Succeeded. All right, so that's basic troubleshooting. Under administration, we have our password information. Remote. Okay, so this is pretty interesting. So, like, if in the old days when MSPs, before MSPs were MSPs, I guess, a lot of times you would set up a management range that was your outside IP address range for management. SNMP. So if you have an SNMP server, you can get traps and stuff. Live update. So you can schedule this thing daily or weekly or bi-monthly or bi-weekly or monthly to go out to live update and look for updates. Proxy information. So there's more on our firmware. So this thing is version 2004.9.13, so pretty old. For LAN, we know what to expect there. This sets the IP address of the actual box itself. 24-bit mask. DHCP is turned on. So we're given a range of 2 to 76, and you see that my Toughbook has grabbed .2. If we had like a Windows DHCP server, like on Windows Server or something, we'd want to make sure to disable this so they don't run afoul of one another. But in this case, this is all that's on the network. On the WAN side, so we can have our connection be DHCP, static, PP over Ethernet, or point-to-point tunneling protocol. Interesting. Same, I'm assuming, for WAN 2. Yep, supports the same things. This Alive Indicator server, I assume this is an IP address that you could put in that's outside your network that it could ping, possibly. And maybe if the pings fail for a certain amount of time, then it'll swap over to this one. It's my assumption, don't really know. And then we can change our high availability mode here, normal, off, or backup. Same for this one. So this one will be considered backup. Really should just be off because we're not using it. Set our host name, domain name, and we can set our MAC. And we've got a setup wizard down here that when you first bring this thing up, it wants to run the setup wizard. But really, who needs that when you've got the whole poke and pray? Firewall. All right, well, this is where all the stuff is. So here I can actually define hosts. And for example, if I wanted to add this computer as a host, look, I already have this up now. Let's just add it. This would have been useful for doing things like content filtering. So we're going to call this Toughbook. And let me grab just a little bit more. Actually, let's go this way with it. I'm so used to having dual screens anymore that having one small screen's tough. All right, so the MAC address on this thing is going to be 000B 97 94 9 Bravo 67. And we can choose what computer group this is going to be in. And it gives you 5 total groups, everybody, and then 4 other groups, like if you wanted sales and accounting or something like that. If you wanted different rules for everybody, like maybe you want computer group 1 to have very little access. Maybe that's your users, and then maybe group 2 could be your executive staff that has full run. You could do that. So we'll choose Toughbook as everyone. The application server deal, if you click this and then put in the IP address of this, for example, this Toughbook, this will basically expose it or let you expose it later for like inbound rules. So like, say for example, this was a FTP server, then you could choose reserve host, put in the IP address, and under inbound rules and services, we could pass that port on into the machine. And then we can bind it with a WAN port, either WAN 1 or WAN 2. So I guess you'd have to probably be careful here, because if you bound it with just WAN 1 and the thing failed over to WAN 2, I guess you'd have no internet, so either. And we don't really care about a PPEoE session because we're not using PPPoE. We'll add that. Click to go back. And we can see that our Toughbook is now added. So let's go over to computer groups. So this is where we can set policy information for various groups. Here are my groups, everyone, and then groups 1 through 4. Well, I'm just working with everyone. So we can turn on antivirus policy enforcement, and we can choose to either warn or block. And this is where you would have to have your Symantec antivirus server running, your enterprise server running. For content filtering, we can turn this on, and then we can say that this person uses a deny list or an allow list. It maintains a couple of different lists, as I remember. The deny list is obviously things that you wouldn't allow people to browse to, and the allow list would be things you would. And then we have also access control. For this group, we can block all outbound access, let them have everything, or we can use outbound rules. So that's pretty interesting. So we'll save that. Click to go back. And then our inbound rules. This is pretty basic inbound rule stuff. This is no different than any other server, except for here. If I wanted to say, like, I don't know, FTP in, if I enable this rule, I've got to tell it an application server. And since we didn't set up an application server over here when we built our host, it doesn't show up. So that's this screen is where you would have enabled that. And once you do that, it would show up here for you to be able to select. So that's all that is. Outbound rules will be much the same. You can build a new rule, the rule name, choose what service you want, and then add it, and it would show up down here in the outbound rules list, which I think by default everything's going out. Services, these are just basically well-known services. So obviously DNS is 53, and redirect to port 53. Again, really basic stuff. There's pretty simple. Special applications. This would be like if you wanted to have an application come in that maybe wasn't part of the known services. Like, is RDP there? No, it's not. So RDP, port 3389. If you were kamikaze back in the day, you could have turned on 3389. Today, that'll get you hacked in about 10 seconds. So I could build 3389, enable it, TCP, listen on 3389, and redirect to 3389, and then I could tie that to a device if I needed to get to it from the outside. Under Advanced, ident port, disable NAT, block ICMP by default, that's cool, and storm protection is good. Exposed host, so this will let one computer have unrestricted two-way communication with the internet server or users. In VPN, I got a few things here. I have a dynamic tunnel that's built on demand that can go like site to site. I have a static tunnel. Again, this would be a more of a site-to-site tunnel. Client tunnels, so I can build different VPN groups and have different policies and information based on what client is connecting. This is where I would build my VPN users and assign them to a group, give them a pre-shared key. Our VPN policies, this is just our transform sets, basically. And then status would show you what tunnels are active. Advanced, so basically just a lot of global stuff here. Some radius stuff. Then we have the IDS and IPS. So this just basically tells us what we're blocking, and a few of these few of these you would remember: Wind Nuke and Teardrop if you're old. Back Orifice. Those are all big ones. And then Advanced Spoofing Protection for the WAN or the Wireless LAN, and validation of TCP flags. In our antivirus policy, this is where we would set the IP address for our and primary and secondary address for our Symantec antivirus server. So when I'm adding users to groups for antivirus policy enforcement, this is where that gets its this is where you set it to go out and check. And our policy validation, basically we can just verify that the antivirus is running on the client machine, whether it's the latest production engine or just any version. So any version means I don't necessarily have to be up to date, but something's got to be there. And then verify latest virus definitions is turned on. And the policy is just to warn, so don't get in their way. For content filtering, basically this is what I was talking about earlier. Like for example, if I go let's turn the caps lock off. Like taco.com, for example, and I add that. Currently I'm looking at the deny list, and taco.com is on it. That should be saved at this point, so let's go out there and see if I can go to taco.com. And I can. So why can I get there? Let's go look. Here's why. I associated myself with Computer Group 1. I didn't set any policies for that, so that was a misclick on my part. So, update. Why am I on Group 1? I think my mouse wheel is getting in my way. Alright, everyone. Update. Alright, click to go back. Now I'm everyone. Now can I get to taco.com? Was that get just cached? Obviously not. For some reason I'm also with that. Lots of stuff going wrong here. Let's try that again. So why is that not happening? Computer groups, everyone, deny, content filtering, taco.com. Maybe we should put it in like this. Taco.com. Add. Save list. I think maybe I didn't click save list a minute ago. Let's see. Let's close, reopen. Still works. I wonder if we should do a restart of this thing. Let's try that. Now let's go back and look at our stuff and make sure that it's still in there. Firewall, Toughbook, that's still there. Everyone group, WAN 1. Computer groups, group everyone, enable policy enforcement, enable content filtering on the deny list. Content filtering, the deny list contains two entries, taco.com and www.taco.com. This should be disallowed. Ah, okay, after a reboot it is. So that's the deal. So if I go back in and I delete this entry and delete this entry, save list, Now there's nothing on there. I'll try it. Yeah, that works. So that's content filtering, and that is the basics of the SGS360. Well, I was thinking about the client VPN portion of this, and it got me thinking. This switch here is on Starlink, and that's technically on the WAN side. So I could conceivably take this laptop, get it off the LAN, and plug it in here, let it get an IP address from Starlink, and I could actually VPN into the WAN side of this box. I think that'd be fun. Before I do anything, let's go ahead and install the VPN client software. I don't know which one of these we should use, but I assume it's AES triple des and des. I don't know. Setup. All other applications must be closed. Got it. I don't care about release notes. We'll just install with defaults. Quick and easy. It hasn't passed Windows logo testing. We don't care. Yeah. Looks like every single module here hasn't passed. Could be that version 7 was the one I needed to install. Don't know. Could read the instructions. Yeah. Yes, I am dying to restart my computer. Let's get rid of this because I think I have USB boot enabled on this. Yes, I have a dumb theme on here. But after a reboot, my display resolution went all kinds of wonky. Let's fix that. Yay. Well, now that we have our VPN client installed, let's jump over on the firewall and let's configure this. I don't believe there's a whole lot to do to configure it. We'll go into VPN, and these two are for LAN to LAN. This is where we start with our client stuff. So VPN group 1, I'm going to give it some DNS to hand over. Although I don't necessarily think that's necessarily, but I did anyway. I'm going to let it sidestep content filtering and all that stuff. We'll update this. And let's create a user. So we're going to call it user 1. And the pre-shared key, what does it have to be? Like 18, it's 20, right? Oh, that should be about 20 characters. Let's enable this user, and we'll add it. VPN policies. This is probably all perfectly okay being default. So let's jump over to our client VPN, and when you first log in with this, you specify a user. For example, I'm just going to keep it the same as I have on the firewall. This has nothing to do with logging in to the VPN. This just gets you into the actual client on the workstation. And I'll use a super secret password, definitely not the same as my username. Let's do a new, and an IP address that will be 192.168.1.21. It was 217, right? Yeah, 1.217, that's what's on our WAN side. And we'll see about downloading VPN policy. I'm not sure if this one supports downloading the tunnels or not. Our client phase 1 ID. All right, so this is going to be our username, which is user 1. So we're going to make that user 1. And then our shared secret is that 20-digit one that we made that was super secret. There. And advanced. I believe we have to put in the IP address of the security gateway here? I don't remember. 217. I think we have to. All right. That should be put together. Let me unplug from the firewall and jump over into Starlink, and that'll get me on the same WAN. Make sure I got an address. This laptop is being really funky about turning loose of its IP address. All right, can I just connect? And I'm thinking possibly no. And I think it's because I told it to download the tunnels. I don't think it can do that. I think I have to specify. Yeah. Let's go to properties and let's go to tunnels. Actually, no. Let's go back to gateway. We have to tell it not to download a VPN policy. Then we'll go to tunnels and new, and the tunnel name will be, I don't know, the LAN. And network address 192.168.0.0. So that is the network that we're ultimately going to terminate the other end of this tunnel at. Okay, so that's the LAN. Should be nothing else that we have to do, I don't think. At this point, I think it'll connect. Yeah, there it goes, connected. All right. So ping 192.168.0.1. So this is the LAN side of the firewall, and that's working. If I disconnect, actually, should have dashed T that, shouldn't I? There. So I'm not getting any pingies across there. Let's connect. I should start getting pingies, and I do. We can also go into our VPN status, and look at that. Look, I see I'm connected. This is me. Big fun. See, that was super simple. How easy was that? All right. Well, I think that is about as far as I'm going to take this little lab session with this Symantec SGS360R. It's been a lot of fun playing with this old stuff. I get a kick out of occasionally going back and playing with very antiquated equipment that you're definitely never going to see back in production, especially stuff that's been out for a long time. You know, if you're an old IT guy like me, or if you worked on some really old obscure gear, definitely drop some info down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys have worked on that's old and weird. So make sure you subscribe to this channel, guys, if you like this kind of content. I have all kinds of weird stuff on here, from repair videos to old IT equipment. As usual, guys, until next time, thanks for watching.